Today's video series is on our color unit. It's called ROYGBIV Zentangle Sunset. So the first part of our video, part one, is going to be creating a rainbow out of ROYGBIV order colors. And the second part is going to be creating the hills and the Zentangle. So this is part one. Enjoy the video. When it finishes, you're going to let your paint dry, and then you can go on to part two. Have fun, and as always, if you need to reach me, feel free to email me. I'll get back to you right away. Take care. Have a good time. Friends, before we get started, I wanted to share with you a book called Sky Color by Peter H. Reynolds. Peter Reynolds is an author and illustrator who's done some wonderful books. He's done Ish and The Dot, so here's Ish and The Dot, and a few other books that we've shared in our class before. I've been waiting to hear back from his publisher to see if we can read it through a video. And I still haven't heard back. As soon as I hear if I can get permission, then I will add it to this video. This was a gift a few years ago from one of my students. It's by Peter Reynolds, and it talks about why sky color isn't always just blue. All right, friends, so this is our next lesson, or less activity on our color unit. And we're going to be creating a rainbow pattern with our sun shape here. And we're going to add some extra texture with it using some patterns of different lines and shapes inside each of these individual shapes. So the first thing that we want to do is get our materials together. We are going to start off with some watercolor paint. Again, just like any of our other projects, if you don't have watercolor, I also played around with this with using crayons, which you can use crayons, or you can use marker, and they need to be kids' markers that are water soluble or washable, like the Crayolas, and we can add water to it and blend it together like a watercolor, or you can just use pan watercolors. And one thing I want to mention with the pan watercolors is these actually pop out of the pans. And this is a Crayola set that I've been using for a while. It's upside down, sorry. And it doesn't have to be exactly these, but some of them, the pans actually pop out. And most of my students will tell you that what I tend to do is I'll pop them and then put them in the right order for them. So when they go to paint, I can limit the palette. Whoops, I can limit the palette so they're getting the colors, just the colors that they need, or they can, they don't have to worry about the order in the trays. So here are my ROYGBIV. We'll go this way, ROYGBIV. So that's all set. And you can do that for your younger students. Makes it a little bit easier for them to keep track. And also they don't start using other colors that you might not want them to be using. So I'm actually going to move my ROYGBIV out of the way here. And so there's my watercolor. And I have a brush, markers, water-soluble markers, Sharpies, or a permanent marker if you are okay with them using that. Otherwise, they can just use a black Crayola, a pencil. And I went around my house to find a round shape that I can use as a tracer for my, my setting sun here. So I found a circle shape that this was the top of a candle, one of those candles. So I thought this was a pretty good size, and I kind of like what that shape looks like. So we're going to use this one, water and a little blotting pad. I also use sponges in my classroom at school. So if you have an old sponge that you want, you can put the sponge on a plate and and dampen it, and then clean the brush off that way. So let's get started. So gather up your tools, materials, a piece of paper, and let's meet back at the table. I'm going to draw a line across the top here, and this is going to be my horizon line. This is where my mountains are. And then I'm going to place my little tracer kind of on the middle there, maybe a little bit lower, because the sun's coming down, kind of in the middle of the paper. And then I'm going to very lightly trace this as a half circle. So there's my sunset coming down. For my landscape, I want to add a few more hills. So I'm going to add some very long, sweeping, wavy lines coming across my paper. Kind of random. They can go different directions. They can come up and then down. Oops, that's kind of interesting. And I'm going to come here. Maybe another one that's kind of strong. So we're just going to do this with a pencil. There's no right or wrong in this, so whatever mark making you make that looks good, awesome. Let's see what you come up with. We're all going to have a little bit different in our mark making, so that's fine. All right, the next part, and this is where we have to count out how many lines we're going to need. This is going to be the rays of the sun coming off of our little half circle here. These are going to be the rays. So in the middle, we're going to draw a wavy line coming up. That's number one. To the right, 5 more lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, and down the bottom here, number 5. That's going to give us 6 spaces. Each one of these is going to be named after one of the colors. So my first one's going to be red, so it's going to be R, Roy, O, Y, Roy, G, B, and a V. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the right. This is going to give us a symmetrical design, a line symmetry for my 3rd graders that just finished their metal mask, a line down the center. And we're going to do the same thing. 5 more lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It gives us 6 lines. The first, 6 spaces. The first space here, the first shape is going to be another R, then your O for Roy, then your Y, A, B, made a mistake. Not a problem. It's actually G, B, and V. So now we have our rainbow order for our sun. So I'm going to use my watercolors. And what I have shown people in the past is that you can, with my students, what I'll do is I'll pop out the pans, because with the Crayola watercolors, the pans do come out. So I can sometimes pop them out and put them in order. It makes it easier for some of our younger artists to be able to see the order already in place. If you want to limit a palette where they're only using warm colors or cool colors, you can pop them out and just have them use the palettes, the little pans separately. So I'm going to reorder mine, which I already did. So I have R, O, Y, G, B, V. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. This way my friends can work and know that they're going in the order of the rainbow. Just another way to reinforce that. I have my water, and I have a little blotting paper and a brush. So I'm going to start with red. And I'm going to wet my brush. And I have not painted today, so my palette's a little dry, so I need to wake it up. So I'm going to put a drop of water on each one of my colors. And this is going to help wake up my watercolor, because it's been sleeping and it needs to wake up. So wake up. Next, I'm going to start with my red. I'm going to get a little water on my brush, and using the tip of the brush, we're not going to squish the brush. We want to be very gentle and use just the tippy toe. And we're going to spin around and twirl around on our brush. And this is going to help to get the pigment, wake up the paint, and get the pigment on the tip. Spin, 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 twirly, twirly. Okay, so I like to outline first. This is just kind of my thing. I like to outline it, and then I'll go back in and fill it in. Okay. And one of the tricks that I've learned is I like to stay in the order of the rainbow, because the colors, if they mix next to each other, they still stay pretty clean. But if you jump around from red to blue, now you're going to start getting purples, and the colors are going to mix, and you're not going to get that pure color that you're looking for. So here's my red. And I'm going to do this red as well at the same time. So I'm going to pick up some more pigment. This might be a little dry. That's okay. Some more water. On the tippy toe, and we're going to twirl, and we're going to come around, and then we're going to fill in our little rainbow here. So I doubled my red on the top of my There we go. Now, I'm going to clean my brush well. I'm going to put it at the bottom of the glass, give it a little scrub, and then blot it. I can see on the napkin it looks pretty clean. Get a little more water, and then I'm going to swirl around with my orange paint. Notice that it's because it's had water in it to wake it up, it should be a little more awake now and ready to go. And the color should be pretty dark. Oh yeah, that looks great. All right, so I'm going to outline with my orange. Okay, and I'm going to do the same on the other side with the orange. That way I have some nice clean colors that haven't been mixed together and turned to mud. We talk about this a lot in class, that if we mix our colors too much, they get very, very muddy. And this is a nice way to keep those colors nice and bright and clean. All right, so rather than take the time to have you watch me do all of them, at this point I'm probably going to speed up the tape just a little bit. Okay. I'm just trying to fill this in. And if you noticed while you're watching the video on my green, I hadn't blotted my brush enough, and I had too much water on it. They started to blend together. If that happens, you have like kind of a blob of paint somewhere that you don't really want, one of the things you can do is take a little piece of a paper towel, and we don't want to rub it, but you can just kind of place it on, soak up what you don't want. And these, the student grade, these kid ones work pretty well with going back and blending back over it. And then I can kind of get rid of the blob or the blend. Or you can leave it, because sometimes it makes a really cool design, and you may want to just leave them blended together because you like how that looks, like it's bleeding together again, because I put too much water. And that's okay. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so that's drying. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working on the body of this.